We've got a call. Good morning, ma'am.
Good.
Good morning.
And it's hey, let's talk about the big issue yesterday. Give me a good rundown. Give the listeners a good rundown.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? My car was connecting. Can you repeat that? Sorry, Tony.
Yeah, Gail. Talk about the decision that came from the Supreme Court yesterday, if you would.
Yeah, it came actually quicker than I thought it would. So I, got to get a shout out to the Missouri Supreme Court. When you're in a legal case for multiple years and you get to the Missouri Supreme Court, you don't really expect to win. That's a pretty, lofty goal. But we took it all the way. So what happened, so the background is that my business in Miller County, Shawnee Bluff Winery,
yep,
and then Point View Resort in Camden County filed a lawsuit a few years ago that kind of sprouted out from the TCLA and the Lake Area Business District soccer complex voting tax increase. And what happened there was a bunch of us resort owners around the area and some just, good people at the lake band together and started to look into the taxing structure, the history, and it's very layered. But in 2019, we voted down the lodging tax, and the soccer complex did not happen. And it's probably good that Osage Beach didn't bond a soccer complex based on this tax.
Yeah.
They're not on the hook right now. And then so the lawsuit was filed really based on the representation of the tax, as far as the board, the voting of the members of the board, how a private entity is managing public funds. And so the Missouri Supreme Court really looked at that. It isn't saying that a lodging tax itself is illegal, and this only affects the actual state statute that calls out the Lake Area Business District. So Morgan, Miller, and Camden County is the only lodging tax district that is affected by this. So any lodging tax that has a different structure in other areas most likely will not be affected by this.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I came here in 2007. It seemed that this was already rolling some questions, some problems that many of the people that felt in the community. When I first got involved with the radio station, I talked to you about this. You, at that time, were not at liberty to speak about it. Give some of the history, exactly what this institution is and how it works. They put a tax on there. They put a tax on it. If you go and get a hotel room or you stay somewhere, you pay this tax and it goes to them, and then they use it to advertise the lake?
Yeah, so it started in 1993. I think that's, obviously, pre-rollout of the internet. So a lot of print materials. I think a lot of the business owners got together and said, hey, we need a mechanism for advertising the lake. And I don't, disqualify or criticize that merit. And so at that time, it was mainly the lodging, the motels, condos, condos, campgrounds, and boat rentals, houseboats. And so the tax is collected by the business. So a guest stays at any of those entities, and the owner, the business owner, lodging owner, collects the tax from those guests and then remits it to the county, where the county collects a 2% administration fee and then sends it to the, quote, Lake Area Business District of that county. Mm-hmm. Well, that was just a bank account pretty much. And then the same people that were sitting on the board for that business district were actually the same people on the TCLA board that is a private nonprofit. And I think that the taxing scheme really was so confusing that it lent itself to that dual setup, that double hat wearing, where the same people for the public board were sitting on the same position. It was like an automatic, you're in both. And so at some point, short-term rentals became so popular that they started to force the tax, and they started to send letters out to individuals renting their private residences that is not in the state statute, and it never was. And I think them forcing the tax on the short-term rentals really started to raise some eyebrows early on.
How do you do that? Where you have to have authority for something. Where did that authority come from that they felt they could do that?
I think it was a false, fake authority that they were told. I think really bad legal advice, really, really bad legal advice from, I'll say Mark Ellinger wrote a letter to the TCLA board saying that they could vote one person could vote 100 times if they managed 100 individual private properties. And Mark Ellinger also represented Camden County, the business, TCLA. They represented TCLA towards the end in the Missouri Supreme Court case. And so it's like, legal opinion is always just depends on who's giving the opinion.
Yep.
And I think it just took, some people to just say, that's not a true legal opinion. That's illegal. And even though it's coming from somebody who has passed the bar exam, this is unconstitutional. And so I think that there were lobbyists being paid, lawyers being paid to give opinions that were in favor of this setup and this mechanism that is extremely unconstitutional, as decided by the Missouri Supreme Court yesterday.
This is a subject that's very difficult to find information on. I dug on it for a couple of months like I said, I even spoke to you one time about it. And is this a normal procedure? Is this what Branson does? Is this what other tourist areas do to promote their cities? Is it normal?
Not this setup. This is a very specific carve-out for Lake of the Ozarks, the way that it was set up. I would say generally a lodging tax goes to a county, and then that county gives it to the DMO. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to hear a lot about, oh, no, we don't have a tax base, we can't go for state dollars. That's incorrect. Mm-hmm. So the CVB once was a DMO, and the TCLA took it over, and the counties are the ones that give that designation to be able to go for the matching grants. And so I would hope that the CVB gets that back immediately. That gives good opportunity to go to the State Board of Tourism and get matching grants.
Sean,
and go ahead.
Sean Kober, he's in studio as well. Luke Hagedorn is in here too. One of the issues that Sean continues to bring up with me is the number of votes, and then you brought that up as well. So if you own 10 businesses, you got 10 votes. You got 100. You got 100 votes?
It was even worse than that. It was if you're a property manager that owns no lodging, but you are contracted with individual vacation homes around the lake, you could vote by proxy for each one of those rentals. So we have large management companies that were voting by proxy, and it's, I think, in their contracts when they would sign up for rental agreements. So say I just have my house, my residential house that I can, mm-hmm. Rent out. Well, I would hire this company, give them a percentage, and they would just manage, renting it out, cleaning it, managing the guests.
Yes.
Well, at the same time, some of these management companies were also including the authority to vote on their behalf with a letter. And so one person would go, these are people that probably live in Arizona, Florida, they don't know what's going on in our local community. And so you have people that aren't even designated by law, by the statute, to be able to vote, that were giving themselves authority to vote 100 times. And that legal opinion was actually an attorney, Mark Ellinger, that gave them that advice written.
How should it be? How do you determine? If you join, should it be if you join, you're a member and the members vote? I don't.
So there's different types of taxing districts, and I feel like this one was trying to be set up as a, like a TDD and a CID. We talk about it a lot, right? Yep. So those are boundary area districts that the business owners within the district generally are the members of the board and have the vote for the tax, that 1% tax. The problem is that, okay, so that's tied to real property. Mm-hmm. Well, the way that this one was set up, it was giving out different carve-outs for the vote of the people. The people could increase the tax with a vote of the people. But the lodging owners, it was the businesses that are actually sending the people to be elected by the board, and only those people could elect the board. And so it really didn't follow traditional election law. It didn't follow Chapter 115, and then it doesn't follow, those specific unique taxing districts. So what happens is, in the way the court looked at it, I think the court was heavily looking at the private entity running public money. I think that was even bigger of a deal than the elections to them, to be honest. Elections were a big deal to me because I experienced that. I ran for the board right after lodging tax because I was told, why don't you get involved? Stop complaining. So I went and ran for my local board. I was the only candidate for that election, for that seat, and I lost to a write-in candidate that owned no lodging. It was just a property manager. And that's pretty much when I filed the lawsuit because I was like, there is no remedy for representation. I mean, they were holding the elections privately at private organizations. They were not running it like a taxing district where you vote for the board at the county clerk. I mean, we got multiple problems here that just lend itself to be extremely unconstitutional.
I want to go back to the original question to all three of everybody sitting here, because all three of you have been here longer than I have. Where did the authority come from? Was there an original vote by the people?
It was the Missouri legislature, right?
I don't know.
Is that right? My understanding was the Missouri legislature that...
So the legislator wrote Luke. The legislature wrote the statute, and it said if the commissioners decide that they want it. So there was a mechanism to initiate it, to where the commissioners, I guess the business owners had to petition the commission, and then if there were enough of them, then the commission said, okay, we'll allow it to go to the vote of the people, and then the tax was implemented by the vote of the people, and then the board was created from there, and then
did it ever go to the people? Did it ever go to the people?
Originally, yes.
Yeah, back in the 90s or whatever, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
I got to take a hard break. Hey, thanks for calling in, Gail.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You see, AM radio is an essential platform for listeners who rely on crucial updates on weather patterns, market shifts, agricultural news. It's also a vital platform for emergency information. Stations like KRMS, AM radio is there for a reason. It's there to operate in the public interest, and that's exactly what it does. And I want my AM radio.
Toys R Us has just proven that AI can go too far. They released a 100% AI commercial, and it's getting torn to shreds on social media, with some wishing bankruptcy on the company. One person comparing it to a Stephen King nightmare, another saying it's AI in a nutshell, uncreative people giving themselves creative titles without actually making anything. Imagine being a teenager and not wanting a date. That's what's going on with the under 20 set these days. A study found that they prefer to be single. The researchers say it's because they value their self-care, mental health, and personal autonomy over a romantic relationship. Fans of the 1994 film Forrest Gump will be happy to know that Tom Hanks and Robin Wright are reuniting with director Robert Zemeckis.
Jenny.
It's another epic love story, a film called Here, based on a graphic novel. In the movie, we're going to see Hanks and Wright de-aged over several decades, playing high school sweethearts who are together until their 80s. That's what's trending. I'm Cooper Lawrence.
If your nonprofit club, group, or civic organization has an event or message you would like to have announced on News Talk KRMS, send it at least 3 weeks in advance to psa@krmsradio.com. The community calendar is sponsored by Adair Roofing, RJ's Family Restaurant, Mills & Sons Insurance, Jeff Hedberg Realtor, and presented by News Talk KRMS.
Coffee! We need coffee!
Have that first cup of coffee with all the information you need.
Better. Much better.
Talk with local Lake Area newsmakers on the Morning Magazine, starting at 9. News Talk KRMS.
Documented it. Just watch the videos.
And we're talking about the Supreme Court decision on it brings out a passion in Sean Kober, and who finds passion at least once a day. He looks around, he finds some if he's not taking a picture of bugs or something. But this issue, it looks like to me, the Supreme Court of the state of Missouri, Supreme Court of the state of Missouri said, hey, you guys got some, from just a very general opinion, you got some sloppy bookwork going on. You got some, and meaning your organization should run like this and not like this. Right or wrong?
I mean, it sounds like that's an interpretation of it for sure. And it was one of those things that they put in place several decades ago. I don't think it was maybe executed the way they had intended in the beginning. And when you start mixing, it's hard for a private entity to tax people, right? I mean, there was an argument about the fact that it was for profit or not for profit, and that may change the outcome. But I'm no legal expert, and I'm just becoming a little bit more aware of the actual
when you
findings
talk
today.
Private entity, Sean, you have used the word. Luke, you have used the word. This is not a board. This is not a board versus. I see something like this working. Boom. We're going to collect the money. We're going to collect the tax. Well, that's kind of how it works. I get it. We need to promote. I get it. There is an elected board. There is an elected board that's set forth by the state legislation or something along those lines. Is that what it should be, or is that what was happening or not happening?
Well, I think the problem, like I said, it was back in the 90s when this came up, and like we talked about, there was no internet at that time. Verbos and Airbnbs weren't like as prevalent at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think it was set up under a different era, and there was some foresight that maybe wasn't included in that. They didn't look ahead at some things, and they didn't see some potential pitfalls that would come along with it. And as the TCLA kind of evolved over the years, it got to a point where they couldn't stand up to a challenge in the Supreme Court, and that's where we ultimately are today. And I know the roots of this go back even further, but I meant to ask when Gail was on, if she sees it the same way. Back in 19, when the soccer complex was the big story, I think that was a real turning point here at the Lake of the Ozarks as far as political involvement and community involvement and things like that, because I think that was able to coalesce a bunch of people who had previously cared about our community in certain ways and had different issues, but it brought everybody together with like a common goal to work for.
I almost say the opposite. I mean, it drew the line. When you're going back to what you were saying, this was comprised of 3 counties. It wasn't just Camden County. It was 3 counties made up these 3 different boards. The voting to become a board member, like Gail said, some of these people had hundreds of votes on their names. That was where the control came in. So then you could control the board. You controlled what was going on. That was the problem. That was, you had control of what was being done by, if you picked up more people that summer as far as management of properties, you'd have more votes. It was that.
The way I'm seeing it is, take any local economic development, take anything. You might have car dealer A that has 12 cars sitting in a lot somewhere. Or you might have car dealer B that has 500 cars. He's a big dealer, things like that. Anyone who joins the organization should have 1 vote. And you're saying that's not what happened. If you owned 100 cars, you got to vote per car.
Yeah, that was kind of the way. Yeah, that was the way at least it was interpreted, and that's the way they operated for a number of years, and they were able to control the board in that way, And
I think you're going to see a tax come back for tourism. You're going to see it. But it's just going to be under a different control mechanism, and it's going to be like every other place that has any kind of tourism. I don't think anybody was opposed to the tax necessarily if it's going to promoting the lake, but a lot of these funds were being siphoned off into the same.
Tax, right? It's easy for the locals to support a lodging tax because you don't feel like you're paying that unless you're actually in the hotel business.
It has nothing to do about the tax. People were willing to pay the tax. It was just where it was going and how it was being spent.
But we don't pay the taxes. You and I don't pay the lodging taxes.
Obvious,
unless you're staying in hotels.
I'll tell you what, the hotel tax is huge.
Yeah.
By the time they get done with you,
it's 5% in Miller County. And it was 3% here. So add it up.
You can get a $50 room and it costs you $75. I don't know what all the charges are, but it was
5% in Miller and it was 3% here. And that was the thing. You go to the Toad, just a little bit down the road, and it was 2% difference. And it's man. I filmed a lot of these things. A lot of these things are on YouTube. A lot of these things are been well documented because it was insane. It was just, that's why we put cameras in those situations, because it was like this wasn't making any sense. We're
going to go ahead and take our last break of the day. We'll come back. That's going to do it for this edition of Morning Magazine. It's sponsored by, this 10 o'clock hour, sponsored by Central Ozarks Medical Center. You can go online at centralozarks.org or give them a call at 877-406-COMC. Your health is their mission. You know, they've got locations in Laurie, Osage Beach, Camdenton, Eldon, Richland. And as you know, that's soon to be opened in Crocker, Missouri, serving the people of Crocker and the surrounding areas. COMC is committed to leading the way to healthier communities, medical clinics, telemedical, behavior, health, and dental. COMC has mobile units expanding into rural communities, offering women's health, pediatrics, chronic pain treatment, addiction treatment. And the Osage Beach Senior Center, then we've got, this is a good one, Luke, baked ham roll, hash brown casserole, peas and onions. They're going to serve until 12:30. 60 and over, $5 suggested contribution. For everyone else, $7, 5709A. And so appreciate everybody coming in. Appreciate everybody coming in today and having a wide variety of discussion topics. And I've kind of lost my little deal here, so there we go. And so, Cobra, good to have you in here, brother.
Yeah, those onions will keep the mosquitoes away.
Is that true?
Yeah, it helps.
I've always heard of peas and carrots, just not peas and onions.
Oh, the onions will keep the mosquitoes away.
How did I know that you would know that,
Oh,
John?
I know it.
It's amazing to me. And tomorrow we're going to continue our interviews with some of the candidates surrounding the state area. And, of course, you did a great job on the three debates for the Republican Club. And that's going to do it for today. Hey, I appreciate you listening, tuning in each day. And you always make it a great show. We'll see you tomorrow.
At your service since 1951, News Talk, KRMS, Osage Beach, and KRMS FM HD3.